The Art of War, the Essential Translation by Sun-Tzu continued. Disc 4.
Chapter 3. Strategic Offensive. Du Mu. Planning and calculation have taken place in the ceremonial temple. Equipment and provisions have been prepared. Now is the time for strategic offensive.
Master Sun said, "In war, better take a state intact than destroy it."
Li Chuan. Do not prize the taking of life. He Yan Shi. To cause the enemy to surrender through the sheer psychological impact, literally the energy dynamic of one's strategy, is the best of all strategies. Zheng Yu. In Master Wei Liao it says, "Victory through the Tao consists in assessing the enemy, then causing him to lose heart and his army to disperse. He remains externally intact but powerless to act. Victory through force involves combat, killing, destruction, and pillage. To take a state intact is victory through the Tao, and to destroy it is victory through force." Jia Lin. To take the enemy state intact and at the same time to maintain one's own state intact, this is the best of all.
Better take an army, a regiment, a detachment, a company intact than destroy them.
Wang Shi. However great or small the entity involved, be it state, army, regiment, detachment, or company, taking it intact enhances prestige and power. Destroying it lessens prestige and power.
Ultimate excellence lies not in winning every battle.
Zhang Yu. Victory through battle entails great loss of life. That is why it is not excellent.
But in defeating the enemy without ever fighting.
Cao Cao. The enemy surrenders without a battle's having been fought. Du Mu. Defeating the enemy through planning. Chen Hiao. General Han Xin, a self-confessed student of Master Sun's Art of War, adopted Li Zhuoqi's plan, and rather than sending his already exhausted troops into battle again, sent an envoy with a letter to the king of Yan, describing in persuasive terms his own army's huge superiority, whereupon Yan surrendered without a battle. The Way and Its Power, Chapter 68. The most skillful warrior is never warlike. The most skillful warrior is never angered. The most skilled at defeating the enemy never strives. The Way and Its Power, Chapter 73. The way of heaven is to be skilled at winning without striving. Giles. No modern strategist but will approve the words of the old Chinese. General Moltke's greatest triumph, the capitulation of the huge French army at Sedan, 1870, was won practically without bloodshed. Translator. This famous axiom of Master Sun's lies at the very heart of his treatise. It is admirably restated by Mark Lewis, writing in 1990, pages 116 to 17. Quote, "The principle that the true commander conquered without fighting or worked out the victory in his mind before giving battle appears in most of the military treatises and epitomized the new art of command. Battle was no longer the testing ground of prowess or honor for the glory of the lineage, but rather a blackboard on which the sage commander gave lessons to his less gifted peers." End quote. The Marxist military theoretician Guo Huaruo, writing in 1984, page 100, has a more skeptical view of the subject. Quote, "Victory without fighting a battle is sometimes the result of a long preceding period of preparatory fighting. For example, we would not have been able to take Peking without a fight during the War of Liberation unless we had already won the Battle of Tientsin, January 1949, that came before it. And the subsequent bloodless surrender of 6 provincial capitals may also have seemed on the surface like victory without fighting, but in fact it was the fruits of 22 years of war." End quote. The American China policy guru J.K. Fairbank offers a biting contemporary summary. Quote, "As Master Sun's art of war makes plain, violence is only one part of warfare, and not even the preferred part. The aim of war is to subdue an opponent, in fine, to change his attitude and induce his compliance. The most economical means is the best, to get him, through deception, surprise, and his own ill-conceived pursuit of infeasible goals, to realize his own inferiority, so that he surrenders or at least retreats without your having to fight him." The author of The Art of War would smile at the American exaltation of firepower, which too easily makes a means into an end in itself. End quote. Varieties of the Chinese Military Experience in Kierman and Fairbank, Chinese Ways in Warfare, Cambridge, Mass., Harvard University Press, 1974.
The highest form of warfare is to attack strategy itself.
Cao Cao. While the enemy is still formulating his strategy, it is easy to attack. Li Chuan. Attack strategy at its very source. During the later Han Dynasty, Ku Shun besieged Gao Jun. Gao sent out his strategic advisor, Huang Fu Wen, to negotiate with Ku. Huang Fu was rude and ill-mannered, and Ku had him beheaded. Ku himself reported this to Gao, saying, "Your minister was ill-mannered. I have beheaded him. If you are willing to surrender, do so at once. If not, then defend yourself well." That very day, Gao opened his city gates and surrendered. Ku's general said to him, "May we ask, sire, you killed his envoy, and yet he surrendered his city. How did this come about?" Ku's reply was, "Huang Fu was Gao's closest minister, his most trusted strategist. Had I spared him, Huang Fu would have achieved his goals. By killing him, I destroyed the very seat of Gao's courage. This is what it means to say that the best form of warfare is to attack strategy." "We did not know this," replied his generals. He Yangshi. While the enemy is formulating his initial plan of attack against us, we must anticipate him by delivering our own attack first. This is easy. We must sound out the drift of the enemy's plans, deploy troops accordingly, and attack his very thinking. Mei Yao Chun. Victory through wisdom. Du Mu. Duke Ping of Jin, reigned 557 to 532 BC, wanted to attack the state of Qi, and sent Fan Zhao there to observe the state of affairs. Duke Jin of Qi offered him a goblet of wine. Fan Zhao, when he had become somewhat tipsy, asked if he could drink out of the ruler's special goblet. Duke Jin ordered his personal goblet to be brought in for his guest. Fan Zhao was already drinking from it when Master Yan, a work bearing his name has been found among the bamboo strip text excavated in Shandong, took the goblet away from him and replaced it with another one. Fan Zhao pretended to be drunk and rose unhappily to dance. He asked the music master, "Can you play the music of Zhenzhou for me? I wish to dance to it." To which the music master replied, "I'm afraid I am not familiar with that music." Whereupon Fan Zhao strode out. "Jin is a great state," said Duke Jin. "This man came here to observe our government. Now you have angered the envoy of a neighboring state. What are we to do?" Master Yan said, "I could see that Fan Zhao understood the rules of propriety but wanted to offend us deliberately. I would not go along with this." The music master said, "The music of Zhenzhou is the music of the Son of Heaven. Only the ruler can dance to it. Fan Zhao is a mere subject, and yet he wished to dance to the music of the Son of Heaven. I refused to play it for him." When Fan Zhao returned to Jin, he reported to Duke Ping, "We cannot attack Qi. I wished to insult their ruler, but Master Yan knew what I was doing. I wished to behave contrary to their rules of propriety, and the music master knew. Confucius later said, "To go no further than one's own banquet hall, and yet to shatter the enemy from 1,000 miles away, this refers to Master Yan." In other words, by knowing, that is, by attacking or undermining strategy itself, Master Yan and the music master diffused the hostile intentions toward Qi. Du Yo. The highest form of warfare is to overcome the enemy while he is still making his plans and mobilizing his troops. As the ancient duke said, "The best way to avert misfortune is to deal with it before it is born. The best way to defeat an enemy is when his troops are still without form." The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, chapter 87. In war, it is best to attack minds, not cities. Psychological warfare is better than fighting with weapons. Mao Zedong. These words are not to be found in the art of war. They are the very summit of the art, superior even to the teachings of Master Sun and Master Wu.
The next, to attack alliances.
Li Chuan. Attack when alliances are first being formed. Mei Yao Zhen. Victory through intimidation. Wang Qi. If it is impossible to foil his strategy, then drive a wedge in his alliances and cause them to fall apart. Giles. Isolate the enemy from his allies. We must not forget that Master Sun, in speaking of hostilities, always had in mind the numerous states or principalities into which the China of his day was split up. Translator. But the destruction of alliances can be costly. Li Ling, writing in 1997, page 50, quotes the Sung scholar Zheng Zhuxian. Destroying strategy brings victory at no cost. Destroying alliances can be very costly without achieving victory.
The next, to attack armies.
Cao Cao. When troops have already been drawn up. Mei Yao Chen. Victory through battle. Li Chuan. To fight it out in battle is a lower form of war. Jia Lin. The ancient duke said, "To wrest victory from the clashing of blades is not the mark of a great general."
The lowest form of war is to attack cities. Siege warfare is a last resort.
Du Yo. Besieging cities and massacring the population is a low form of offensive. It entails excessive casualties. Mei Yao Zhen. A prodigious waste of material and human resources. Wang Qi. It involves extensive casualties and may not even lead to the capture of the city. Translator. Giles' illustration of this maxim reflects the mood of his time. Quote, "Another sound piece of military advice. Had the Boers acted upon it in 1899 and refrained from dissipating their strength before Kimberley, Mafeking, or even Ladysmith, it is more than probable that they would have been masters of the situation before the British were ready seriously to oppose them." End quote. One of Giles' favorite strategists, the Vicomte de Turenne, 1611-75, Louis XIV's marshal, echoed Master Sun's sentiments on this matter. Quote, "Strategic caution and logistic accuracy, combined with brilliant dash in small combats and constancy under all circumstances of success or failure, may perhaps be considered the salient points of Turenne's genius for war. Great battles he avoided. Few sieges and many combats was his own maxim." End quote. Encyclopedia Britannica, 11th edition, 1910-11, volume 27, page 414.
In a siege, 3 months are needed to assemble protective shields.
Li Chuan. Used to protect the soldiers' heads as they scale the city ramparts.
Armored wagons.
Li Chuan. 4-wheeled wooden missile-proof mobile tanks propelled from inside, each carrying 10 men, used for the purpose of filling up the encircling moat of a city with earth.
And sundry siege weapons and equipment.
Li Chuan. Such as scaling towers and cloud ladders.
Another 3 months to pile earthen ramps.
Cao Cao, to pile high earthen ramps up against the city walls.
The general who cannot master his anger orders his troops out like ants, sending 1 in 3 to their deaths without taking the city. This is the calamity of siege warfare.
Cao Cao, if a general is too angry to wait for the siege equipment to be got ready and sends his men clambering over the city ramparts like ants swarming up a wall, many of them will die or be wounded. Du Mu, as when a general is insulted by the enemy and cannot preserve his sang-froid. The Emperor Tai Wu of the Northern Wei, Tuo Batao, A.D. 408-52, led a force of 10,000 men against Zhang Zhi of the southern kingdom of Sung at the city of Yutai. The emperor asked Zhang for a ritual goblet of wine, whereupon Zhang filled a wine jar with urine and presented it to him. The emperor flew into a mighty rage and proceeded to attack the city forthwith. His men engaged in close combat without armor and attempted to scale the walls of the city in successive waves. No sooner were they repulsed than they surged recklessly forward again and were cut down and lay in piles on the city walls. This went on for 30 days until more than half their number were dead. Others were dying of sickness. Finally, the emperor gave the order for the retreat. A saying has it that a single woman can hold a besieged city against 10 men. This story suggests that the saying is an understatement. Translator. The Greek historian Polybius, circa 202 to circa 120 BC, has this to say about irascible generals, quote, "Rashness, temerity, and uncalculating impetuosity, as well as foolish ambition and vanity, give an easy victory to the enemy." End quote. The Histories, translated by Evelyn Shuckburgh, London, Macmillan, 1889, Volume 1, page 238. Giles speaks for his own time in his comment on siege warfare. Quote, "We are reminded of the terrible losses of the Japanese before Port Arthur in the most recent siege which history has to record." End quote.
The skillful strategist defeats the enemy without doing battle.
Li Chuan. He defeats him through planning. He does not subdue him through battle.
Captures the city without laying siege.
Li Chuan. He captures it by planning. During the later Han dynasty, Zhang Gang, Marquis of Zan, besieged the demon rebels in Yuanwu, but was unable to take the city for several months. His own officers and men fell ill and suffered from ulcers. The prince of Donghai said to him, "Here you are with your troops surrounding an enemy determined to fight to the death. There is no planning in this. You should abandon the siege and offer them a visible escape route. They will surely flee and scatter, and then the merest constable will be able to take them." The Marquis followed his advice and took Yuanwu.
Overthrows the enemy's state without protracted war.
Li Chuan. He overthrows the state by guile, and it soon collapses. Du Mu. He sees the potential dynamic of a situation, a weakness in the enemy camp, and seizes the opportunity. It is like pushing over a rotten tree. Jia Lin. He overthrows the state but does no harm to its people. When King Wu attacked Yin, the people of Yin hailed him as their father and mother.
He strives for supremacy under heaven intact. His men and weapons still keen, his gain complete. This is the method of strategic attack.
Cao Cao. Without engaging the enemy in battle, he achieves his goal entire and intact, is victorious under heaven, and has not subjected his troops to blood and sword. Translator. This central thesis of Master Sun's is closely paralleled by Nasir al-Din al-Tusi, 1201-74, Wazir of Hulegu, the Mongol Khan responsible for the sack of Baghdad in 1258. Quote, "It is not prudent to have recourse to arms if it is possible to disperse and annihilate the enemy through ruse and stratagem. Ardashir said, 'Do not use a stick where a whip will do, or a sword where a mace suffices. War must be the last resort to break the unity of the enemy and disperse his troops. Ruses, deceit, fabrication, and the use of lies are not reprehensible, but recourse to treachery is never permissible. The most important dispositions to take for any war are to be alert and send out spies and scouts." End quote. Quoted by Chaliand, writing in 1994, page 445.
In war, with forces 10 to the enemy's 1, surround him.
Du mu. Surrounding involves having men massed on all 4 sides so that the enemy cannot escape. The encirclement has to be at a certain distance from the town under siege, and it has to occupy a considerable space. A strict guard has to be mounted, and without a large number of men there are bound to be gaps. That is why 10-fold forces are needed. Zhang Yu. When our men are 10 to his 1, surround him on 4 sides and take him. This is the case when both sides are evenly matched in every other respect. If, however, we are strong and the enemy weak, there is no need for such numerical superiority before encircling him. As Master Wei Liao said, "In defense, 1 man can resist 10, 10 can resist 100, 100 can resist 1,000. In other words, it takes 100 to surround 10. The idea is the same. Amio. Totally surround the enemy, making sure that he can neither escape nor receive the slightest reinforcements.
With 5, attack him.
Cao Cao. This allows for 3 direct maneuvers and 2 indirect. Du mu. Divide our troops into 5 parts. Use 3 of those parts to mount an attack and keep 2 in readiness for a surprise assault on a crack in the enemy's defenses. Zhang Yu. When our troops are 5 to his 1, we can surprise him in the front and fall upon his rear, assault him from the east and attack him from the west. Without 5-fold superiority, it is impossible to adopt such a many-pronged plan.
With 2, split in half.
Cao Cao. When our troops are twice the enemy's, use a double strategy. Direct attack on the one hand, surprise attack on the other. Zhang Yu. Divide our troops into 2, using 1/2 for a frontal assault, the other to attack the enemy's rear. If the enemy responds at the front, then attack the rear. If he responds at the rear, then attack the front. This is what Cao Cao means by double strategy.
If equally matched, fight it out.
Mei Yao Chern. If potential strengths are matched, then fight. Jiang Lu. Use subterfuge. Use direct as indirect. Use indirect as direct. Play infinite variations. Bewilder the enemy. Use every surprise method to gain the victory.
If fewer in number, lie low.
Li Chuan. If you are weaker than the enemy, strengthen your defenses and do not expose yourself. Wait for his zeal to slacken before sallying out and attacking him. This is what the Qi general Tian Dan did when he was besieged at Jimo. He used the stratagem of the blazing oxen to destroy the troops of Yan. Du mu. If your troops are fewer, temporarily avoid his onslaught, wait for an opening, then surge forward decisively and take the victory. This requires patience and forbearance in the face of the enemy's provocations, which was beyond the ability of the Chu general Cao Ju at the river Tsi, who in 203 BC was provoked by the Han into impetuously sending his men across the river where they were cut down. Jia Lin. When the enemy is numerous and you are few, keep your troop dispositions hidden from the enemy. Meanwhile, lay an ambush for them. Confuse them with subterfuge and ruse. This too can lead to victory. Another interpretation: hide your troop dispositions and keep the enemy in the dark as to your plans. They may suspect some ruse and flee themselves.
If weaker, escape.
Zhang Yu. When weaker in every way in terms of troops, strategy, morale, then the thing to do is to withdraw and wait for a new opportunity. Mei Yaojun. When the enemy is numerous and we are few, get away. Do not give battle.
A small force obstinately fighting will be captured by a larger force.
Du Mu. An obstinate refusal to withdraw or escape will lead to capture. Meng. A small force cannot withstand a large one. What this means is that if a small state does not assess its own strength properly and dares to oppose a large one, whatever measures it may take to defend itself, it will end up being taken captive. As the spring and autumn annals say, they could not be strong, nor did they know how to be weak, and so they were defeated. Li Chuan. If a small force fails to assess its own strength and insists on fighting, it is sure to be taken captive by a larger force. When the Han commander Li Ling pitched his 5,000 infantry against a force of 100,000 Xiongnu, he was annihilated. Giles. In other words, c'est magnifique, mais ce n'est pas la guerre. Marshal Bosquet's famous comment on the charge of the Light Brigade, 1854.
The general is the prop of the nation. When the prop is solid, the nation is strong. When the prop is flawed, the nation is weak.
Jia Lin. When the general is a solid support to his sovereign, the nation is strong. When there is the slightest division between general and sovereign, the nation is weak. Guo Huaruo. Writing in 1984, page 107, comments predictably, quote, "This undue emphasis on the importance of the individual commander is not in accordance with dialectical materialism." End quote. The Duke of Wellington did not agree. Quote, "I used to say of Napoleon that his presence on the field made the difference of 40,000 men." End quote. Stanhope, Life of Wellington, page 9, quoted by Giles.
A ruler can bring misfortune upon his troops in 3 ways. Ordering them to advance or to retreat when they should not is called hobbling the army.
Li Chuan. Not knowing when to advance or retreat leads to sure defeat. It is like tying together the legs of a thoroughbred. It cannot gallop. Jia Lin. The decision whether to advance or retreat must be taken by the general flexibly in response to a changing situation. Nothing is more disastrous than for the sovereign to issue orders from the seclusion of the court. As the ancient duke said, "The nation cannot be governed from the field, nor can war be directed from court." Wang Shi. To get rid of this crippling misfortune, the general must be given unrestricted power, which makes it all the more imperative to appoint a general who is both loyal and gifted.
Ignorant interference in military decisions confuses officers and men.
Cao Cao. The military and the civil are distinct spheres. You cannot direct an army in terms of ritual. Zhang Yu. Compassion and righteousness are the principles on which to govern a state, but not an army. Tactical flexibility is a military rather than a civic virtue. This is only proper.
Ignorant meddling in military appointments perplexes officers and men.
Mei Yaochern. Making appointments without a knowledge of the art of strategy causes perplexity. Giles, that is, the ruler is not careful to use the right man in the right place.
When an army is confused and perplexed, the feudal princes will cause trouble. This creates chaos in the ranks and gives away victory.
Mei Yaochern. We ourselves create the chaos. We ourselves give away the victory.
There are 5 essentials for victory. Know when to fight and when not to fight.
Zhang Yu. If you can fight, advance and take the offensive. If you cannot fight, retreat and remain on the defensive. He who can determine which is appropriate, the offensive or the defensive, will invariably be the victor. Du Mu. This is the same as the knowing of self and the knowing of the enemy that Master Sun discusses later. Meng. Victory comes from correctly assessing the enemy, from examining his strengths and weaknesses.
Understand how to deploy large and small numbers.
Zhang Yu. According to the art of war, a lesser force can defeat a greater, and vice versa. The secret lies in making the appropriate judgments and not letting the right moment slip by.
Have officers and men who share a single will. Be ready for the unexpected. Have a capable general, unhampered by his sovereign.
Du Yo. A skillful general well-versed in military strategy should be given full rein by his sovereign. As Master Wang said, the sovereign gives broad instructions, the general makes battle decisions. Giles. Napoleon undoubtedly owed much of his extraordinary success to the fact that he was not hampered by any central authority, that he was, in fact, general and sovereign in one.
These 5 point the way to victory. Hence the saying, know the enemy, know yourself, and victory is never in doubt, not in 100 battles.
Zhang Yu. These words refer to both attack and defense. Knowing the enemy, you can take the appropriate offensive. Knowing yourself, you can adopt the appropriate defensive strategy. Attack is the secret of defense. Defense is the planning of attack. Know this, and you will never fail, not in 100 battles. The Way and Its Power, Chapter 33. To know others is wisdom. To understand oneself is enlightenment. To conquer others requires force. To conquer oneself shows strength. Translator. The Greek historian Polybius said of Hannibal, quote, "It is mere blind ignorance to believe that there can be anything of more vital importance to a general than the knowledge of the character and disposition of one's opponent." End quote. Histories quoted by Shalian, page 113. This, one of Master Sun's most famous maxims, was endorsed by Mao Zedong. Quote, "This saying of the great Chinese military thinker of ancient times, Master Sun, includes, under knowledge, the stages of both theoretical knowledge and practice. It includes the observation of the laws of development of objective practice and the process of determining one's own actions in accordance with those laws so as to overcome the present enemy. We must not underestimate the wisdom of this saying." End quote. Selected Works, page 166.
He who knows self, but not the enemy, will suffer one defeat for every victory.
Li Chuan. If one is aware of one's own strength and yet one has not estimated the enemy properly, victory is not assured. The Prince of Qin, Fu Jian, in AD 383 led an army of 1,000,000 soldiers south against the forces of Jin. Someone commented that the Jin had men of the caliber of Xian and Huang Chun, and that he should not underestimate them. To which Fu Jian replied, "I have the assembled forces of 8 provinces in my army, 1,000,000 horses and men. They could dam the Yangtze River itself by merely throwing their whips into it. What have I to fear?" He was subsequently heavily defeated.
He who knows neither self nor enemy will fail in every battle.
Chapter 4. Forms and Dispositions. Sun-Tzu. Military dispositions, marching and counter-marching, each army endeavoring to discover the other's true condition. Du Mu. It is through outward dispositions, forms, that the true condition of an army may be discovered. If you are without form, your dispositions are not visible, your true condition will remain secret. Once your dispositions are known, your true condition becomes transparent. Being secret brings the victory. Being transparent, defeat. Wang Shi. The skillful warrior can secure victory by adapting his own dispositions to those of the enemy. Zhang Yu. This refers to the dispositions of both armies in attack and defense. So long as one's own are hidden, the enemy cannot know them. Once they are visible, the enemy can exploit the slightest crack or opportunity. Since dispositions become manifest in attack and defense, this chapter follows the chapter on strategic offensive. Translator. The word used in the title of this chapter, xing, has the fundamental meaning of form, shape, appearance, and is used in the traditional language of Chinese geomancy, feng shui, to refer to the configurations of the earth, the ways in which the shapes of the earth, its hills and rivers, reveal and express its underlying dynamic, shi. Here it refers to the military formations and positions that equally reveal the underlying strength or weakness of an army. But in Master Sun's strategic thinking, the philosophical implications of form, i.e. military dispositions, are subtler than those to be found in a more mechanical strategist, such as von Clausewitz, 1780 to 1831. At times, there is an unmistakable Taoist tinge to Master Sun. One is reminded of the fundamental Taoist notion of non-action, Wu Wei, of minimal interference and maximum spontaneity, according to which things will, quote, come out right to the extent that people are aware of their circumstances and of each other, end quote. Angus Graham, Disputers of the Tao, LaSalle, Illinois, Open Court, 1989, page 233. Quote, the greatest carver does the least cutting, unquote. The Way and Its Power, chapter 28. Quote, the way constantly does nothing, yet there is nothing it does not do, end quote, chapter 37. Quote, if I do nothing, of themselves the people are transformed, end quote, chapter 57. At times, the skillful warrior resembles the almost invisible Taoist sage. In Chapter 6, for example, we are reminded, the highest skill in forming dispositions is to be without form. Formlessness is proof against the prying of the subtlest spy and the machinations of the wisest brain.
Master Sun said, of old, the skillful warrior first ensured his own invulnerability.
Zhang Yu. In other words, he knew himself.
Then he waited for the enemy's vulnerability.
Zhang Yu. He knew his enemy. Mei Yao Chen. Kept dispositions hidden within and waited for the other's weakness or lapses. Translator. Throughout this passage, the words I have translated as invulnerability and vulnerability, Bukisheng, literally unbeatable, and Qisheng, beatable, can be more widely understood as strength and weakness.
Invulnerability rests with self, vulnerability with the enemy.
Cao Cao. One should cultivate oneself and wait for a lapse on the part of the enemy.
The skillful warrior can achieve his own invulnerability.
Zhang Yu. He can achieve this by concealing the disposition of his troops, by covering up his tracks, and by taking strict precautions. These things are within his sphere of action.
But he can never bring about the enemy's vulnerability.
Du Mu. If my enemy presents no visible disposition, no lapse that can be exploited, then even if I myself may have perfected every tool for victory, how can I defeat him?
Hence the saying, one can know victory and yet not achieve it.
Du Mu. All I can know is whether my own strength is sufficient to defeat the enemy. I cannot cause the enemy to slacken and provide me with the opening necessary for victory. Du Yo. This is because the enemy has taken precautions. If I can assess the enemy correctly and observe his dispositions, then victory can be known. But if the enemy is secretive and keeps his dispositions invisible, I cannot force him into defeat. Hence the saying of Fan Li, "If the time is not right, matters cannot be forced. If the affair is not ready, it cannot be hastened to completion."
Invulnerability is defense.
Sun-Tzu. It is a matter of keeping dispositions hidden. Du mu. If I have not been able to observe the enemy's dispositions and vulnerability, I can at least keep my own dispositions hidden. I can keep myself invulnerable and defend myself. Mei Yao Chern. It is a matter of waiting.
Vulnerability is attack.
Sun-Tzu. If the enemy attacks me, then he becomes vulnerable. Du mu. Once the enemy reveals a vulnerable disposition, go out and attack him. Mei Yao Chern. It is a matter of spotting the lapse.
Defense implies lack. Attack implies abundance.
Sun-Tzu. I defend because I am lacking in strength. I attack because I have an abundance of strength.
A skillful defender hides beneath the ninefold earth.
Sun-Tzu. Taking advantage of the shelter provided by mountains, rivers, and other natural features. Du you. The skillful defender must take advantage of the obstructions caused by mountains and rivers and lesser hills, so that the enemy does not know where to attack. He hides secretly beneath the ninefold earth.
A skillful attacker moves above the ninefold heaven.
Sun-Tzu. Taking advantage of the changing weather. Du you. The skillful attacker must take advantage of the transformations of weather and terrain, using flood and fire according to the situation, so that the enemy does not know where to prepare. He moves like a bolt of lightning above the ninefold heaven.
Thus they achieve protection and victory intact. To foresee the ordinary victory of the common man is no true skill.
Sun-Tzu. One must see the subtler origins. Li Chuan. Foreseeing an ordinary victory is no skill at all. When General Han Xin destroyed the state of Zhao, a truly extraordinary victory, he marched out of Well Ravine without so much as eating breakfast, saying to his men, "We will feast after destroying Zhao." His generals were aghast, but mumbled a perfunctory agreement. Han drew up his men with their backs to the river, a deadly position and an obvious breach of tactical rules. And when the men of Zhao looked down and saw this from the battlements of the city, they roared with laughter, saying that Han Xin knew nothing of warfare. But sure enough, he defeated Zhao by means of a subtle stratagem, and his men had their feast. This was because General Han could see beyond the common man. Translator. This story, a favorite with the commentators, is recounted in much greater detail toward the end of chapter 11.
To be victorious in battle and to be acclaimed for one's skill is no true skill.
Sun-Tzu. It is just winning. Li Chuan. Winning a combat by sheer force is highly visible, but not skillful. Du mu. Acclaimed by the common man already referred to. This is the sort of victory that involves wiping out an army and eliminating its generals. My idea of skill involves subtle planning, secret movements, targeting the enemy's mind, attacking strategy, a bloodless victory. Jia Lin. Solid defense, decisive attack, protecting oneself intact, a clear knowledge of victory and defeat before either occurs, these are the signs of the genuine military adept, the warrior of true subtlety and insight. These are far beyond the ordinary victory of the common man. The Way and Its Power, Chapter 22. Therefore the sage embraces unity and makes it the measure of all under heaven. He does not exhibit himself and is seen. He does not assert himself and is manifest. He does not boast and therefore succeeds. He is not proud and therefore becomes the leader. It is because he does not contend that no one under heaven can contend with him.
To lift autumn fur is no strength.
Zhang Yu, the fur of the hair finest and lightest in autumn.
To see sun and moon is no perception. To hear thunder is no quickness of hearing.
Zhang Yu, these are things everyone is capable of. They suggest the ordinary victory of the common man. He Yan Shi, these are the ordinary attainments of the common man. Wu Huo could lift a tripod of 1,000 jun. 1 jun weighed 30 catties or Chinese pounds. Now that was strength. Li Zhu could tell apart objects the size of a grain of mustard at 100 paces. That was perception. Shi Kuang, the blind musician, could hear a mosquito or an ant move. That was hearing. Li Chuan, the truly wise and capable general, is deeply inscrutable, engrossed in his stratagems. As Master Sun said, Chapter 7, he is as inscrutable as night.
The skillful warrior of old won easy victories.
Sun-Tzu, the easy victory lies in subtleties, in attacking the vulnerable, not the invulnerable. Mei Yao Chun, seeing the obvious makes for a difficult victory. Seeing the subtle makes for an easy victory. The Way and Its Power, Chapter 63. It, the way, acts without action, does without doing, finds taste in the tasteless. It makes the little great and the few many. It tackles the hard in the easy, the great in the small. The difficult affairs of the empire are dealt with when they are easy. The great affairs of the empire are dealt with when they are small. So the sage never acts big, but always succeeds in being big.
The victories of the skillful warrior are not extraordinary victories.
Translator. The words, quote, are not extraordinary victories, end quote, are not present in the accepted text but are found in the bamboo strips. See Wu, writing in 1990, page 59.
They bring neither fame for wisdom nor merit for valor.
Du Mu. His victories are based on seeing the subtler origins, so the world at large knows nothing of them, and they bring no fame for wisdom. The enemy surrenders, the victory is won without bloodshed, and the victorious general receives no credit for his valor. The Way and Its Power, Chapter 17, the highest statesmen, sages, were those of whom nothing was known. The task was accomplished, and the common people considered it to have happened to them of itself. The Way and Its Power, Chapter 20. The world is full of those that shine. I alone am dark.
His victories are flawless.
Zhen Hao. He plans no superfluous moves. He devises no futile strategies. Zhang Yu. He who conquers by brute strength, skillful though he may be, is also liable on occasion to be defeated, whereas he who can look into the unseen and discern conditions that are not yet manifest will be victorious every time. His victory will have no flaw in it.
His victory is flawless because it is inevitable. He vanquishes an already defeated enemy.
Zhang Yu. His victories are flawless because he detects the inevitable dispositions of defeat within the enemy camp before deploying his troops.
The skillful warrior takes his stand on invulnerable ground. He lets slip no chance of defeating the enemy.
Du Mu. Invulnerable ground means an invulnerable strategy, a strategy that denies the enemy the slightest chance of victory. Letting slip no chance means keeping a close watch on every slightest crack in the enemy's guard, not missing the tiniest shred of a chance.
The victorious army is victorious first and seeks battle later. The defeated army does battle first and seeks victory later.
Du Mu. As Master Zhuan said, the seasons of heaven, the advantages of earth, the counting of troop numbers, all these elements must form part of the planning. Careful planning must precede any dispatching of troops beyond the borders. He Yan Shi. In warfare, first lay plans that will ensure victory and then lead your army into battle. If you have no stratagem but rely on brute strength, victory is by no means certain.
The skillful strategist cultivates the way and preserves the law. Thus he is master of victory and defeat.
Du Mu. The way is the way of compassion and righteousness. The law is the sum of the rules of military organization. Zhang Yu. He cultivates the way of war. He preserves the law of mastering the enemy. Thus he is sure of victory. Translator. This is one of Master Sun's frequent evocations of the warrior adept. The wisdom of the art of war was a mental skill that could be verbally formulated and taught. The strategist transmitted and taught an esoteric wisdom that expressed divine patterns inherent in the cosmos. Lewis, writing in 1990, page 98. And it was the warrior adept's mastery of this warfare of the mind that enabled him to lead his troops to victory. Lewis, page 104.
In war, there are 5 steps. Measurement,
Jialin, of terrain.
estimation,
Jialin, of strength in numbers and of supplies in granaries.
calculation,
Jialin, in terms of numbers, the many as opposed to the few, the strong as opposed to the weak.
comparison,
Jialin, having calculated the numbers, ascertaining the relative weight and ability of the two sides. Wangxi, weighing with a steelyard balance. Translator. The word cheng refers to the Chinese suspended steelyard of unequal arms, used since ancient times for weighing.
victory,
Zhang Yu. This refers to the likely victorious outcome consequent on having a proper arrangement of camp and battle formations. As Duke Li said, training troops is like placing pieces on a go board. If there is no designated path, how can you deploy your men?
earth determines measurement,
Cao. We measure according to the outward form, xing, and dynamic energy, xi, of the earth, terrain.
measurement determines estimation,
Du Mu. Once the earth, terrain, has been properly measured, then we can estimate the enemy's relative strength.
estimation determines calculation,
Du Mu. Calculation of the best strategic use of opportunity.
calculation determines comparison,
Du Mu. Comparison of the relative chances of ourselves and the enemy.
comparison determines victory,
Du Mu. Once we have made the comparison, the victory will be self-evident. The Way and Its Power, Chapter 25. Man is patterned on earth. Earth is patterned on heaven. Heaven is patterned on the Tao. The Tao is patterned on the natural. Translator. Joseph Needham, writing in 1994, page 47, comments that this passage, which he thinks is probably a quotation from a very ancient text, older than Master Sun's Art of War, was not fully understood and has always puzzled commentators. He himself understands it in the following way. According to the principle of war, the first measurement is distance, the second measurement is volume, the third is number, the fourth is weight, the fifth is victory. Or, as he paraphrases it, territory determines physical distances and contours, my measurement, and these determine the necessary strength for an army, estimation. Because there are potentially strong and weak areas which indicate the number of troops which should be used in particular places. The distribution of troops determines the might that can be mustered at any particular place, calculation, and this in turn affects the balance of power, comparison. This last factor is the one that determines victory.
A victorious army is like a pound weight in the scale against a grain. A defeated army is like a grain in the scale against a pound weight. A victorious army is like pent-up water crashing 1,000 fathoms into a gorge. This is all a matter of forms and dispositions.
Sheng Yu. By its nature, water avoids the high and hastens to the low. When a dam bursts, the water comes crashing out with irresistible force. Now the forms and dispositions of an army resemble that of water. Take advantage of the enemy's unpreparedness, attack him when he least expects it, avoid his strength, and strike his weakness. Then you are like water, and nothing can oppose you.
This book is continued on Disc 5.